New Orleans.
Or New Orleans. And we have been asked the question what it's like to be the first au pair. We usually advise that you speak to your host family's previous au pairs to kind of find out what they were like. But if you're the first au pair, you don't have this opportunity.
We have both been au pairs, like the first test au pair is what we say. It's definitely a unique experience, so it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
So we're gonna just list off a bunch of things that we think only first au pairs experience that other pairs do not. There are pros and cons to the situation. I feel like we kind of talk about it like you should find a family that's had an au pair before, but it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes being the test au pair, you get away with the things that other au pairs wouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly. Being the test au pair for me meant I got closer to the family faster because I wasn't just one of all the nannies that have come through the house or one of all the babysitters. I was this unique, new, special person who was being integrated into their lives, and they wanted to show me everything. So I was the first au pair in Berlin, so I ended up going to Cologne. I went to all sorts of different places in the country with the family. I went on holiday with them, and every experience was unique and amazing for the both of us. So I think that was my number one pro of being the first test
Very,
au
very
pair.
true. I'd say the same thing. Being the pioneer au pair, they're gonna love you the most out of all the au pairs that come after you,
if
you do a good job. Which, you know, it's not hard to do a good job, but you become the comparison that all the other au pairs that come after you are compared to. One hard thing about being the very first au pair is that with the au pair program, not all families really know how it's gonna work. And even families who do all of the research, finding the dynamic and knowing whose responsibilities are what is a really weird thing to figure out. So you and your family have to go through this tester period. So I think it wasn't bad, but it was definitely a period of time that I remember having to go through that I didn't have to go through when I worked for a family who had an au pair before, because they knew what were the au pair's responsibilities and what weren't, when to, I don't know,
step in with discipline. I think that was one that we had to like feel out, whether like if you're in the house but I'm in charge that moment and the child wasn't doing what I say, do you step in or don't you step in, and whether they would undermine you, and you just have to figure it out by talking.
Yeah, that kind of discipline. And then even like money, they have to pay you every week, which, you know, if you've never had an au pair before, you can completely forget that. They have to compensate you for money that you've used to pay for bus tickets for your kids. You know, they have to compensate for you for that, and it can be easy to forget that as well if you've not been doing it consistently. Another pro about being the first au pair in terms of discipline is that since your kids have never had a nanny before, they kind of take you as an adult figure, and you might be more likely to have a better time disciplining them, because if they've had many au pairs before, they kind of know the deal. They know you're gonna leave, and they know that your parents have hired you to come in, so there's this employer-employee dynamic, and if the kids pick up on that, I mean, you know, the kids are going to pick up on it eventually, but if you're the first au pair, it can be kind of easier because they don't really know what's happening, and they just know that you're this adult in the room. So if you take charge right away, it might be easier for you to find that authority than it would be if, you know, you were just another au pair.
Another pro which I found was that my host parents were willing to get to know me a lot better and integrate me into the family, like I said, but they would also take the time to sit down with me in the evenings and try and cultivate a relationship in the way that I found I didn't experience with families who'd already had an au pair, because again, I was new, I was fresh, they wanted to show me the city, and they didn't really realize that the au pair community is quite big, so you can instantly find friends. So that was nice, because I think once you've had one au pair, you know the deal. It's quite easy for au pairs to meet new au pairs. But they thought like, oh, we've got to really help you out with finding friends, finding babysitting work, finding hobbies, getting German lessons, all those kind of things. So I was really happy about that.
And that's not to say that your parents won't do that if you're not the first au pair. There are families that are so great at integrating you and helping you out. That's your whose family's job is to help you out.
Exactly.
But if you were the first au pair, you're special.
Yeah, I did find that they went above board, and sometimes they'll be like, oh wow, all these free things today, thanks.
A last negative factor of being the first au pair is the subject of boundaries. Because with being an au pair, you are living in the house, or at least very close to where your host family lives, and finding the dynamic and that line of when you're off and when you're on is super difficult. I think that's one of the most difficult challenges of being an au pair, because you feel like you're always working, and host families that have had au pairs multiple times know that, you know, they have certain rules in place that if the au pair's door of their bedroom is closed, they're off. The kids aren't going to come in and disturb your peace. And technically, you're supposed to have a lock on your door, I think. Don't quote me on that. At least in some countries you do. But at least have you're supposed to have a door, which signifies some sort of actual physical boundary between your private space and the public space that you have in the family's house. So I think being the au pair, the first au pair, it's hard because you're in charge of asserting yourself and letting the family know when they're pushing your limits and when they're not, whether that's in terms of money, in terms of boundaries, in terms of just being overworked in general. You need to be more vocal than other au pairs that might come after you will have to be, because you're setting the ground rules.
Yep. Holidays as well, figuring out when you're going to have a holiday and how long it's going to be for, and whether it's going to be over the weekend, or all those sorts of things need to be discussed as well, which I never had to do when I was the next au pair.
And I think to surmise, that's the biggest advice that we can give anyone who's trying to be an au pair for a family for the first time. Don't rule out families that have never had au pairs before. While it's great that you can talk to previous au pairs and kind of test the family that way, it is nice to be, as you can see, the first au pair of a family. There are some perks. But it means you're responsible for really vetting the family, Skyping them as much as possible, asking them the hard questions so that you're not taken advantage of and disappointed when you arrive and have to work for them. And just really being vocal about how you feel. Prepare yourself to be assertive. Because
prepare for those awkward questions in advance.
Yeah. You're gonna have to ask awkward questions. You're gonna have to bring up topics that your host family might not have ever thought of before. And whatever you do is gonna set the precedent for everyone that comes after you. So not only are you doing yourself a favor, but you're doing everyone else a favor too.
Yeah, but don't be discouraged. We both loved being first au pairs. Yeah,
and I visit my host family all the time now because I'm like, their special little au pair in Paris. So I really enjoyed being the first au pair in the end.
Me too.
That's all for now. If you have more questions, please put them down below.
Please also follow us on Twitter at Au Pair Au Paris, and
check out our website. We have all of our updates and new stuff going on there. Ciao for now. Ciao.